Shalom, Israel. All praises for the first day of the week. I'm your host, Kadar. First and foremost, I'd like to always thank the Most High Abanawa, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Welcome to our segment, Provoking Thought. Before I continue, I'd like to give all shout out to a brother that just called me before coming to do this talk. I'd like to give thanks to you, brother Obadiah, that's out there. Your words show a lot of encouragement and strength, and I appreciate that. Okay, just to let you know. But I give thanks to praise. Okay, everybody. Today we're gonna go into a mini lesson covering a little bit more about the Feast of Purim, a little more of Queen Esther, Mordecai the Jew, and also with Daniel and the two occupation of the rulers. Okay? We're going to break down a little bit of the timeline and get a little bit more understanding of what our forefathers been through during the captivity in Persian Mede and Babylonian captivity. Okay? So, without further ado, I'd like to just go ahead and jump into it. This is called Jews and Rulers in High Places. Okay? And with this is, we're going to talk about how Israelites have risen to the top and their interaction with the rulers of the other nation in the high places. All right? We're going to go into how Israelites were able to turn things around for Israel in the Babylonian and the Persian Mede captivity. Okay? All right? Jews, rulers in high places. First, let's go to the book of Proverbs, chapter 4, verse 7. Wisdom is the principal thing. Therefore, get wisdom. And with all thy getting, get understanding. So that's something we at True Heritage, we believe in. Okay? We believe that every time we go into this book of the Most High, the Holy Scriptures, that we get understanding in all fashion, in all areas. Because we believe this is the time to really understand the instructions of this book in captivity. Okay? Again, wisdom is the principal thing. Therefore, get wisdom. And with all thy getting, get understanding. We're going to start with the letter of Paul in the book of Ephesians. This is the letter that Paul is writing to the church up in Ephesus in Asia Minor. And as we read, Ephesians chapter 6, 10 to 12. Finally, my brethren, be strong in the Lord and in the power of his might. Put on the whole armor of God, that ye may be able to stand against the wiles of the devil. For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. So, we in Israelite right now, we do wrestle with each other. Okay? We wrestle with each other. We have disagreements. Even with sleeping Israel, you have a lot of violence happening in our community. But at the end of the day, it's how the rulers set their policies that create the conditions that we live in right now. Okay? Our rulers are in the high places, but we're wrestling with each other. Okay? Okay, for we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. Okay? Now, Jews and rulers, part 1. This is going to be really a first part of the series that, as time go on, we will be putting out Jews and rulers, whether it be in the Old Testament or in the New Testament, as time goes on. But this is our first part 1, Jews and rulers. Now we're going to begin with the book of Tobit during the Assyrian captivity. Let's go in the book of the Apocrypha. This is the book of Tobit, chapter 1, verse 1 to 2. The book of the words of Tobit, the son of Tobiel, the son of Aniel, the son of Aduel, the son of Gabiel, of the seed of Asiel, of the tribe of Naphtali, who in the time of Enemesar, king of the Assyrian, was led captivity out of Thesbe, which at the right hand of the city, which is called properly Naphtali in Galilee, above Asher. Now, remember, Galilee, when we go in time of Christ, was where Peter and disciples lived. And also, this is where Christ did majority of his work in Galilee, which is in the lot of Naphtali. Okay? So this is, the book of Tobit, this is like maybe 500 years before the time of Yeshua Mashiach. All right, as we move on, we jump to verse 9. Furthermore, when I was come to the age of man, I married Anna of my own kindred, and of her I begat Tobias. And when we were carried away captive in Nineveh, all my brethren and those that were my kindred did eat of the bread of the Gentiles. But I kept myself from eating, because I remember God with all my heart. So, this is Tobit, a family man, a righteous man. He and his wife and his son Tobias at that time was very, very young. Okay? Were taken into captivity when the Assyrian have taken northern kingdom into their land of Nineveh. All right? That's the stage right there. So now, if we jump all the way to chapter 14, okay, what we're going to read right now is, this is Tobias, Tobit's son, who's, a grown man now. All right, this is his account, his writing. And we read, Tobit chapter 14, verse 12 to 13. And when Anna, his mother, was dead, he buried her with his father. So he buried his mother Anna and his father Tobit. But Tobias departed with his wife and children to Ecbatane, to Rigiel, his father-in-law, where he became old with honor, and he buried his father and mother-in-law honorably, and he inherited their substance and his father's Tobit's. Okay. So now we have Tobias, who went and lived at his father-in-law's regional area, and he had his wife. Okay? Now, his father-in-law and his mother-in-law had passed, so he buried them also, just like he buried his father and mother, Tobit. Now, when you read verse 13, it says, we can read it again. Verse 12 says, and when Anna, his mother, Tobit's mother, was dead, he buried her with his father. So Tobit buried his mother Anna with his father. Right? But Tobit departed with his wife and children to Ecbatane, to Rigiel, his father-in-law. So Tobit went to live with his wife's father-in-law in their region. Okay? Verse 13. Where he became old with honor. This is Tobit's father-in-law, who became old with honor. And he, Tobias, buried his father and mother-in-law honorably. And he, Tobias, inherited their substance. Tobit buried his father-in-law and his mother-in-law honorably, and he, Tobit, inherited their substance. Right? And continue. And his father Tobit's. So Tobit inherited his father-in-law substance, and his father Tobit's and mother's inheritance. So both inheritance went to Tobit. Now, of course, his wife is gonna, get part of the inheritance because they are one. But this goes to show you too, this is a law, that the inheritance of the wife's father, your father-in-law, really goes to the husband. Because when you go in the wilderness in the book of Moses, I believe during the wilderness, we had the daughters of Manasseh, right? The daughters of Manasseh, father and mother had passed. But unfortunately, the father did not have any sons. So the daughters went to Moses and said, Moses, our father have no sons to give an inheritance to. Who shall the inheritance go to? And Moses went to the Most High. And Most High told Moses to tell the daughters of Manasseh, hold on to the inheritance, marry men of your own tribe, that means men of Manasseh. Once they marry, then the inheritance go to who? To their husband. So then now their husband decide how they should distribute or use the substance and inheritance. That was an Israelite way of living. Okay? But unfortunately, in this life where we are right now, in this captivity, it's not so. Okay? We hear all the time. If a woman get her inheritance here, and you married to her, it's still her inheritance. You're just lucky to be a part of it if you can. Sometimes you get the crumbs. But that's a different understanding and different lessons. I'm not going to dwell on that. But just to show you, that was the lifestyle of an Israelite law of inheritance. Okay? Where he became old with honor, and he buried his father and mother-in-law honorably, and he inherited their substance and his father Tobit's. Okay? This is Tobias we're talking about. Oh, this is Tobit, chapter 14, verse 14 and 15. Now, and he, this is Tobias, died at Ecbatane in Media. So that means he was living in Media, being 107 and 20 years old. So Tobit died at the age of 127 years old. Right? Being 107 and 20 years old. Verse 15. But before he died, this is Tobias, the son of Tobit, he heard of the destruction of Nineveh, which was taken by Nebuchadnezzar and by Ahasuerus, and before his death, he rejoiced over Nineveh. Okay. So now, we know when the Assyrians took Israelites, the northern kingdom, to captivity, then Babylon came and took control of all Assyrians' property, all Assyrians' kingdom, swallowed them up. Tobias was present at the time when Babylon went to Jerusalem in Israel and took the southern tribe, Judah, Benjamin, and Levi. Tobias was there. Okay? He rejoiced when he heard that Babylon had took over Nineveh. Why did he rejoice? We're going to go into it. Okay? Let's read again. Verse 15. But before he died, he heard of the destruction of Nineveh, which was taken by Nebuchadnezzar and Ahasuerus. And before his death, he rejoiced over Nineveh. Now, I have the lion with the wings represents Babylon, and I have the bear with the 3 ribs represent what? Persian Medes. So, Tobias was there to see Assyrian captivity, Babylonian captivity, and the Persian Medes. Okay? Tobias was able to see all of this during his time. Okay? Okay. So, what we're going to do now, we're going to deal with the Babylonian captivity. We're going to jump into it. This is Daniel's vision. If you go Daniel 7, 3 and 4. And the hour of great beasts came up from the sea, diverse in one from another. First was like a lion, and he had eagle's wings. I beheld till the wings therefore were plucked, and it was lifted up from the earth, and made stand upon the feet as a man, and a man's heart was given to it. Okay, so now we're talking about the Babylon, the vision that Daniel had of what? The Babylon captivity, the Babylon coming to take rulership over the Assyrian. Alright? Now, during the Babylon captivity, Nebuchadnezzar was king. So let's go to Daniel chapter 2, verse 48-49. Then the king, this is King Nebuchadnezzar, then the king made Daniel a great man, and gave him many gifts, great gifts, and made him ruler over the whole province of Babylon, and chief of the governors all over the wise men in Babylon. 49. Then Daniel requested of the king that he set Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego over the affairs of the province in Babylon. But Daniel sat in the gates of the king. See now, as time went by, Daniel was put in a high position through Nebuchadnezzar. Nebuchadnezzar made Daniel, Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego also rulers of certain provinces that Babylon were in control of. That's big. But guess what? Tobias was there. Tobias was able to see that. Okay? Tobias was there when Daniel and his 3 brothers were given a position over Babylonian kingdom. Okay? Let's read on. Okay, then Daniel, verse 49. Daniel requested the king to set Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego over the affairs of the province of Babylon. But Daniel sat at the gate of the king. So, when we go into when Mordecai, first in the book of Esther, we read that Mordecai were at the gates of Shushan the palace. Now, at first, maybe 8 years ago, reading that, you think that when you see Mordecai is at the gates of the palace, like he's just a man hanging on around the gates and everything. And no, what that meant was he had a position during that time near the palace. He had an office. Okay? Because we just read here with Daniel, Daniel was at the gates of Nebuchadnezzar. He had a high position or office in the Babylonian kingdom. Okay? So, with that position that Daniel and his brothers have, that means there were what? There was pockets of Israelite communities in Babylon. Okay? Pockets of Israelite communities. Because when you go into the book of Susanna, That was during the time of Babylon. Okay. And during that time, Israel had their own laws. But we're going to go more into that. So, Daniel sat in the gate of the king. Okay. Now, move on. As we go on, Nebuchadnezzar eventually fell because of his high mightiness, of course. Most High took him down, took the rulership from him, and gave it to his son, all right? His son named Belshazzar. Okay? During the same time of Daniel and his brothers Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego were in office. Let's read Daniel chapter 5, verse 29 to 31. Then commanded Belshazzar, and they clothed Daniel with scarlet, and put a chain of gold about his neck, and made a proclamation concerning him, that he should be the third ruler in the kingdom. Now, with Nebuchadnezzar's son being ruler of Babylon now, he gave Daniel even a higher position. Made him third ruler of the kingdom. Okay, so I guess there was different levels of rulership in certain areas. That was more power that Daniel had in his hand. With this power, what do you think Daniel did? He made sure the Israelites were able to what? Do the Most High laws. Establish pockets of community throughout the whole regions of the Babylon provinces. They had communities. They were able to do their laws. Practice all the customs that they did when they were in the land. We're going to get there. Now, verse 30. Unfortunately, Nebuchadnezzar's son, Belshazzar, reign was going to come to an end. Because when you read it, this king was using all the Most High's gold and vessels and golden cups, and was drinking out of them and eating out of them like it was just his right. Like it was his right. But before the Most High took him down, he made sure that Belshazzar elevated Daniel and his brothers. Right? And we go to verse 30. But that same night that Daniel was uplifted, and in that night was Belshazzar, the king of the Chaldeans, slain. He was smote, he was killed. And Darius the Median took the kingdom, being about 62 years old. Now we see the Persian Medes coming in. Babylon was ruling Nebuchadnezzar and his son for a period of time, which we're going to see 70 years. Their time was up. Daniel and his brothers were rulers in the occupation of the Babylonian property or providences. Then the Persian Medes came, killed Nebuchadnezzar's son, and took over. Now, let's go back to one of Daniel's vision that he saw. Daniel 7:5. And I behold another beast, a second, like to a bear, and it raised up itself on one side, and it had 3 ribs in the mouth of it, between its teeth of it. And they said thus unto it, Arise, devour much flesh. So this bear with the ribs between his teeth represented what? The Persian Medes. Because when the Persian Medes came to take over Assyrians, Babylonians, and Israelites. All kingdoms. We're going to find out from India to Ethiopia. Persian Medes engulfed much territory, much landmass, much providences. Okay? But Daniel was there in his position. He was still with a governor, a president, a ruler, and his three brothers, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And Tobias was there. Okay, when we go in the book of Tobit, we read that Tobias was able to see the Persian captivity do what? Engulf Nineveh. But remember, Tobias was joyful of when Babylonian Persia came and took over Nineveh. Now, was he joyful because another nation took over the place where he grew up, Nineveh? No. Tobias was joyful because what? Daniel and his brothers were in a position of power to do what? To turn things around for the communities, the Israelites that was living in Nineveh. Because during that time of Assyrian captivity, Nineveh was a place, it was like a ghetto place. Okay? Israel was going through so much suffering in Nineveh when the Assyrian had occupation of it. If you want to think, for those of you in the New York area or the Brooklyn area that know certain neighborhoods, Nineveh is almost like the neighborhood of Brownsville, East New York. Okay? You go to these neighborhoods, walk through this neighborhood. Those are neighborhoods where you have a lot of sleeping Israelites who's sort of like not part of the food chain, who gets the crumb. This community is very is very how can I say it? So much impoverished in that community. There's a lot of violence, a lot of gangs in that community of Brownsville. That's what Nineveh was. It's not easy for a young man to grow up in a community like Brownsville. And that's what Tobias went through in Nineveh. But all praises to the Most High, Daniel and his three brothers were in positions of power to what? Turn things around in that community. We're going to show you how. So the Persian captivity came. We saw that with Darius, who killed off Nebuchadnezzar's son. And Daniel was still in that position. Let's go to the book of Daniel chapter 9. And in the first year of Darius, the one who just took over Belshazzar, king of Babylon, the son of Ahasuerus. So that's the king who Esther married. That's the king where Esther became his queen. So in the first year of Darius, the son of Ahasuerus, of the seed of Medes, which was made king over the realm of the Chaldeans. So this is what our understanding what happened. The Persians, Medes came. Alright? Darius was given the Chaldeans a big providence for his occupation. To who? His father, Ahasuerus, who's in Shushan, ruling all the nation. Okay? Daniel was in high position, and his brothers, and Tobias was there. Okay? Verse 2. And in the first year of his reign, in the first year during Ahasuerus, king of the Persian Medes, I, Daniel, understood by books the number of years whereof the word of the Lord came to Jeremiah the prophet, that he would accomplish 70 years in the desolation of Jerusalem. So, while Darius now is in rulership over Daniel, Daniel went back to the records that they kept and saw that Jeremiah the prophet, Jeremiah had written that the Babylon captivity would be a period of 70 years. So Daniel had that record and went back to the record while he was in position of power. Right? But we're going to go into that book of Jeremiah real quickly. Let's jump to Jeremiah. This is what Daniel read. Jeremiah 25, verse 11 to 12. And this whole land will be a desolation, an astonishment. And these nations shall serve the king of Babylon 70 years. And it shall come to pass that the 7 years are accomplished, that I will punish the king of Babylon and that nation, said the Lord, for the iniquity and the land of the Chaldeans, and I will make it a perpetual desolation. So, this is what Daniel was reading when he went back into the records. Okay? But was Israel free? Was Israel able to go back into the land right after that 70 years was up? No. That was just Babylonian rulership for 70 years. Okay? Israel was doing something to hold that up as a nation. It was not yet for them to come back in the land, because something that they were doing, maybe the Most High wasn't pleased with as a nation, that he kept them in there. And then you had the Persian Medes. But that's another understanding. Okay? So that was the prophecy that Jeremiah had written and Daniel had records of. Now, let's go in the book of Esther. Now, this is King Ahasuerus, who's what? We just read in Daniel, he's the father of Darius. Okay? Darius, remember, took a liking into Daniel. So he kept Daniel at his position. Daniel was still in his high position under King Darius, the ruler of the Medes, the son of Ahasuerus. Okay? And we read Esther chapter 1, verse 1 to 2. Now it came to pass that in the days of Ahasuerus, this is Ahasuerus, which reigned from India even unto Ethiopia, over 127 provinces. That in those days, when the king Ahasuerus sat on the throne of his kingdom, which was in Shushan. So while he was in Shushan, his son Darius was ruling certain areas, the Chaldeans. Right? Daniel was still in their high position. Tobias was still living, because Tobias was there during that time. And this king and Esther and Mordecai was where? In Shushan. Okay? Now, Esther 1:3. And in the 3rd year of his reign, he made a feast unto all his princes, and his servants, the powers of Persia and Media, the nobles, the princes of the province being before him. Now, King Ahasuerus made a feast of his accomplishment of taking over a whole region of countries. He had a feast. There were noblemen there. There was princesses there. There was his servants there. His son Darius was there. And we believe Daniel and his brothers were there, feasting with the king. Think about it. If we're wrong, email us. true12heritage@gmail.com. Okay? But he was having a feast with the nobles. If you read again, the nobles, which are the elders of his kingdom, the princesses, the rulers, of all the kingdoms of the providences before him. They were at the dinner table. Israelites were sitting at the dinner table. Israelites and Jews and Persians, leaders, were all sitting at the dinner table. Right before he requested for his queen, Vashti, to come. And of course he was dishonored by her, but that's a different story. But they were all at the dinner table, feasting. Now, who else was there? And after these things did the king of Ahasuerus, Haman was there. Haman also was there at that table. Haman the Agagite also was there at the table, sitting amongst Jews, Persian Medes, rulers. Yeah, it's possible. Rulers of high places, they may not like each other, they may not agree with each other, but they will find a way to sit amongst each other, right? To do what? To rule over a nation's people of the certain providences. But each one of these princes, servants, nobles, each one have a vested interest for who? For their own kind. And Haman only had a vested interest for who? For the Amalekites that was there. Okay? But there were Jews at the table. There were Persian Medes, rulers at the table. The king Ahasuerus, he was just king. So after these things did King Ahasuerus promote Haman, the son of Hammedatha, the Agagite, and advance him, and set his seat above all the princesses that were with him. So Haman was given rulership above everybody, including Daniel and his brothers, maybe even including his son Darius. But Haman have huge power over all the rulers in all the providences from India to Ethiopia. Haman the Agagite. Okay? Now they had a meeting, another meeting, right? Now, Esther 3:8. And Haman said unto the king Ahasuerus, there is a certain people scattered abroad. There is a certain people who have pockets of community throughout all the providences. This is what Haman was doing when they was having a meeting of the round table, when they were about to cast lots or vote on certain matter. But Haman said there's a group of people that have their own communities throughout all the providences. Right? And Haman said unto King Ahasuerus, there is a certain people scattered abroad, and is dispersed among the people in all the providences. So these people, these Israelites, king, they're so spread out. They got communities everywhere amongst the other nations. Okay? Just what he was saying. Because remember, Jeremiah said when they went into Babylon to, in your captivity, continue to build houses, continue to build yourself, build your communities while you're in captivity. And that's what they did. Again, middle of verse 8. And to disperse among the people in all the providences of the kingdom, and their laws are diverse from other people. So he said, wait a minute, king. These people that have these pockets of communities throughout all the providences that you control have their own laws. They have their own marriage laws. They have their own inheritance laws. They have their own dietary laws. They don't eat the cattle that we have. Haman had a problem with that. They even had their own court system where they rule each other and judge each other. This is why Haman was telling the king. Because when you go in the book of Susanna, when the two wicked elders was being tried for their deception towards a nobleman's wife, they were in the judgment seat of Israel. That's when Daniel was young, when you go into the book. So there was Israel was able to judge themselves within their community. And Haman, that guy, had a problem with that. He said, these people got their own court system. These people are not eating the cattle that we have because they got their own cattle, but they're not eating the rest of the cattle. They got their own laws, king. So he said, their laws are diverse from all people. He tells the king, these pockets of Jews, Israelites in the community, they got a different God than ours. We put up idols and they refuse to bow down to them. They have their own laws. This is why Haman was bringing out to the table. Right? Continue. And their laws are diverse from all people. Neither kept they the king's law. So now to get the king fired up, he says, King, even your laws they don't keep. Because the laws you have, it's not the same laws that they have. And of course, we know the Persian king laws is not the same laws of the Most High, that power, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And this is what Israel during that time was doing within their small pockets of community. And who co-signed these laws for Israelites to do that? Daniel and Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego. All the Israelites that were in high places made sure that Israel was able to have their community. They set certain laws in place. The king has no idea about all of this. The king Ahasuerus, all he knows, his job is just to control providences. He has people in place to make sure everybody's paying their tribute. Okay? The only thing on the king's mind is, again, assassination attempt and losing the queen. That's it. He doesn't know. But Haman makes it a point to let him know that their laws are diverse from all people, neither keep they the king's law. Therefore, it is not of the king's profit to suffer them. So he's saying the king should not allow them to continue. Right? Then what happened? Then, verse 10. And the king took his ring from his hand and gave it unto Haman, the son of Hammedatha, the Agagite, the Jews' enemy. So now, the king gave Haman more power than every ruler, Jews, Israelite, Persians, throughout the whole land of India. He gave Haman that power. So now we know that what Haman did was what? He changed policies, right? He changed policies in order to what? Entrap Israelites in those communities. He knew the laws that they were following. But as an enemy of the Israelites, right? Knowing the laws, knowing the God that we worship at the time, Haman orchestrated the building of idols. Because he know those are laws. And then now, with these laws that he built, if no Israelite followed them, then what? A judgment will come to them. This is why it happened between him and Mordecai. Mordecai pissed him off. Because Mordecai refused to bow down to him. Why should Mordecai bow down to Haman? His community was good because what? Daniel was in position of power. So Mordecai had no fear of this man because what? Daniel and his brothers were in position of power. Who are you? Haman, you're nothing to me. But then, unfortunately, Haman got position of power. To the point where now he's able to change things around against Israelites, where Mordecai and Esther had to go on a 3-day fast and prayer with sackcloth and ashes. Okay? I hope everybody see where I'm going at with this, because this is a time of the Feast of Purim. You know, we feel like we try to get as much understanding as possible. Cover all ground according to what happened during that time before the Feast of Purim. So now, Haman made war to the Jews. Let's jump right here for a second. And we went into this yesterday's Shabbat on Queen Esther, on fasting and prayer. Daniel 6 and 4. Then the presidents and the princes sought to find an accusation against Daniel concerning the kingdom. But they could not find no accusation, no fault, for as much as he was faithful. Neither was there any error or fault found in him. Now these princesses and presidents were under Darius, the ruler of the Chaldeans, under his father Ahasuerus' rulership. So they all was on the same table. All of them. So even them wanted to conspire against Israelites. Right? But here. And then these men, we shall not find any accusation against this Daniel. This is Daniel 6 verse 5. Except we find it against him except we find it against him concerning the law of his God. The same mindset as Haman. Who they got that information from? Haman. Who knew the Israel so well as being a real adversary towards Israelites? Haman. Because they were also ruling at the same time Haman was ruling. Alright? What did Haman tell them to do? Then these presidents and princesses assembled together to the king and said unto him, King Darius, live forever. This is King Darius of the Chaldeans. Right? His father was Ahasuerus, who was in Shushan, and his son was the king in the Chaldeans, running things for him. Haman and Darius knew each other. They sat at the same table. Right? Exchanging ideas and exchanging understanding of the providences. They had to. Studying the Israelites, studying every nation that was underneath their rulership. Right? They had to. Daniel verse 6. Daniel chapter 6 verse 7. And all the presidents of the kingdom and governors and the princesses and the counselors and the captains have consulted together to establish a royal statute to make a firm decree that whosoever shall ask a petition of any god or man for 30 days, save thee, O king, shall be cast into the lion's den. So this is where they figure out how to entrap Israelites and also Daniel. Meaning that they're going to make a policy of building an idol, right? And whoever rules against it, if any Israelites that was up in the high places, like Daniel and his brothers, or any Jews, who do not vote for this within these 30 days, should be cast into the lion's den. Darius really didn't want to do it, but his hands was forced because of who at that time? Haman the Agagite. Because Darius did give in. And then eventually Daniel was thrown into the lion's den during that time. And Darius went and made sure Daniel was okay, and he was. And what did Darius do? He all his servants, he threw right inside the lion's pit. This was Darius that did. But where they got the idea from? Haman the Agagite. He was the Jews' enemy. Right at that time. And of course now we know that at this moment, Mordecai and Esther were fasting in prayer. And I'm sure Daniel and his brothers were also fasting in prayer, because all was happening simultaneously at that particular time. If there's any disagreement on this understanding, email us. You can email us of your thoughts. Okay? True12heritage@gmail.com. Now, as we move along. Now, in the midst of all of this, this is where the Most High had intervened. The God of Israel, the God of Abraham, Isaac, Jacob intervened now. Because what? At that time, Mordecai and all the Israelites in those provinces did what? Fasted and prayed for 3 days as one. Once they did that, this is where the Most High intervened. How? Well, as we read Esther 6:1. On that night could not the king sleep, and he commanded to bring the book of records and of the chronicles, and they read it before the king. And it was found written that Mordecai had told of Bathanan and Teresh, the two of the king's chamberlains, the keepers of the door, who sought to lay hand on the king Ahasuerus. And the king said, what honor and dignity had been done to Mordecai for this? Then said the king's servants that minister unto him, there is nothing done for him. So now, while Mordecai and Esther and Israelites throughout the whole provinces were fasting and praying for those 3 days, the Most High came and pricked the king's spirit. He couldn't sleep. He had to go back into what was written in his books of the Chronicles. Right? Knowing that there were 2 men that made an assassination attempt on his life. But Mordecai interjected that assassination attempt. So now the king is like, well, this man, this Mordecai has to be honored. Who is this guy? Who is this Mordecai? Listen, the king don't know what's going on. The king don't know Jews or anything like that. Because remember, Esther, the king did not even know that Esther was an Israelite, a Jew. Because what? Mordecai told her not to speak of it. All right? But this king is like, what can we do for this man? Verse 6. So Haman came in, and the king said unto him, what shall be done unto the man who the king delighted to honor? Now Haman thought in his heart, to whom would the king delight to do honor more than to myself? So Haman is already thinking that, oh, the king is referring to him. Right? He thinks he's the man. That's what he's thinking in his heart, not knowing the king just read something to make him, make a very strong appeal and decision. Right? And Haman answered the king, for the man who the king delight to honor, all right, verse 8-9, Esther chapter 6, verse 8-9, let the royal apparel be bought, which the king uses to wear. You see that? He's saying, bring the king's apparel. Him thinking it's for him, he wants to wear the king's apparel. So he tells the king, bring your royal apparel that you wear. right? And the horse that the king ride upon, and the crown royal which is set upon his head. And let this apparel and horse be delivered to the hand of one of the king's most noble princes, that they may array the man with all whom the king delighted to honor to bring. So Haman said, and let one of the noble princes of the king bring it to this man. Him thinking is himself. Right? And bring him on horseback through the streets of the city, and proclaim before him, thus shall it be done to the man whom the king delighted to honor. So this is what Haman taught to himself. And now this is his opportunity to deceive the king, to get what more? To get what? More power. As if the power he already had wasn't enough. Okay? It's alright. Esther verse 6:10. Then the king said to Haman, okay, make haste, and take the apparel of the horse, as thou hast said, and do even to Mordecai the Jew, that sitteth at the king's gate. Mordecai the Jew that sat at what? The king's gate. At the king's office. So Mordecai had an office in Shushan. It probably wasn't a high office, but it was high enough where Mordecai had a leadership role with the pockets of community within the areas of Shushan. This is a provoking thought. Huh? The king said, verse 10, then the king said to Haman, make haste, and take the apparel and the horse, as thou hast said, and do even so to Mordecai the Jew, that sitteth at the king's gate. Let nothing fail of all that thou hast spoken. Don't even do everything. Don't let that fool you. And Mordecai came again to the king's gate, but Haman hasted to the house mourning, and having his head covered. So Haman was crushed. It was over for him. Well, he know he had to go home, mourn, and tell his family he's finished, it's over. Mordecai was given the higher position. This is the Most High that power doing. The Most High pricked the spirit of King Ahasuerus, because what? Israel made supplication while in captivity, 3-day fasting and praying. While all of this was going on, Daniel too, all the Jews, all the Israelites. Maybe Tobias was there too. Maybe he took part in the fasting and praying. Who knows? But he was around during Persian captivity. You know. Let's go on. Jump to Esther 8:2. And the king took off his ring, which he had taken from Haman, and gave it into Mordecai. And Esther set Mordecai over the house of Haman. So now the king gave Mordecai the ring, took the power from Haman, and gave it to Mordecai. And Esther and Mordecai had more power and rulership. What did they do with it? Esther chapter 8, verse 9. Then were the king's scribe called at the time in the 3rd month, that is, the month of Savan, and the 23rd day thereof. And it was written according to all that Mordecai commanded unto the Jews. And it was written all that Mordecai commanded unto the Jews. What is Mordecai doing now? He's turning things back again. He is restoring what was Daniel had put in place before Haman changed policies and wanted to start building idols and different laws. Mordecai implemented the Israelite laws back during this time. So Israelites could not be judged. Now, if anybody from the other nation violates the law that Mordecai put in place, they were doomed. As you read in Esther, you had other nations that were so afraid of the Israelite in that position of power that a lot of them became Jews. Okay, out of fear for their lives. This is what Mordecai did with his power. Daniel was there. It was written according to all that Mordecai commanded unto the Jews and to the lieutenants and to the deputies and rulers of the provinces which are from India to Ethiopia, and 127 provinces. Mordecai was given so much power to do what? Turn things around. For who? For the interests of our forefathers, the Israelites, in captivity. Okay? Thank you for coming. This is a thought-provoking moment. We got more. Now, our forefathers, when you go into the relationship between the prince, the Jews, the Israelites, and the rulers of the other nation, we see that once our forefathers got into some position of power, they went for the interests of who? Our people, the Israelites. They made sure that laws that the Most High had given them was implemented in the laws of the other nations. Okay? The same thing that happened during the time of Joseph. When Joseph became rulership in Egypt, what did he do? He implemented the laws that he learned from the Most High. When his brothers and Israelite families started coming into Egypt and it started populating, progressing, them too was having position of power in Egypt. Until years later on, a pharaoh that knew not of Joseph came up, changed things around, and put some hard bondage on Israelites in Egypt. Okay? So we see that with our forefathers once again in rulership. The Most High always set that up, right? So during this feast of Purim, that's another thing that we also got to remember. Now, I want to go into this for a moment. I hope everybody could see this. I know it's a little bright. This is Hiram Rhodes Revels. All right, I'm just going to read a bit about him. Hiram Rhodes Revels. Okay. September 27, 1827 to January 16, 1901 was an American politician, minister of the African Methodist Episcopal Church, and a college administrator born free in North Carolina. He later lived and worked in Ohio, where he voted before the Civil War, elected by the Mississippi legislation of the United States Senate as a Republican to represent Mississippi in 1870. And in 1871, during the Reconstruction era, he was the first African American to serve in either the House of the U.S. Senate. Now, the reason why I'm bringing understanding this brother here is because, Judites here during the time of our captivity have done certain accomplishments. Hiram Rhodes Revels, an African American, a Judite, rose up to the ranks, became one of the first U.S. Senate a Judite. And what he did was, when you go more into his background and history, he gave more Israelite voting powers, more of African American voting rights. Okay? Because you gotta understand, this system here have a method of system, right? This captivity. In order for certain things to happen, voting is a strong force. Voting matters in certain extents. Even though the voting process is sophisticated, but our people are still able to move up ranks to make sure certain things happens where we're given a voice or a little edge of power. Not saying we get total power, okay? I mean, there's only so much that we could do in this captivity, but reading about this Judite's background is almost remind me of who? Daniel or Mordecai. Okay? Look him up. Do the research on him. Okay? It's Harem Rose Revel. Here's another one. Fannie T. Willis. Fannie T. Willis. Who is Fannie Willis? The Georgia prosecutor now investigating Donald Trump for possible election tampering. A district attorney. Excuse me. This sister right here is like Queen Esther, who, in the state of Georgia, a district attorney in the state of Georgia is doing what? She is prosecuting Donald Trump, bringing him to court, subpoenaing him because of what? Of voter fraud. Because they're trying to do what? Take away Judites in Georgia voting rights. You see that? Now, she may not know she is Israelite. She may not know this understanding. But it goes to show you, that there's a lot of our people that are in high positions to turn things around. The same thing that Queen Esther did. Okay? I just wanted to bring that out. And here's this other one. Very interesting one. Brooklyn rapper Shine. Now, Shine, years ago, he was a rapper, upcoming rapper, under Bad Boy Puff Daddy Records. Shine grew up in the same neighborhood that I grew up, so I remember his uprising. But unfortunately, Shine got himself into some heavy trouble, some heavy heat, where he had to do a bid. He had to do some time. This is Shine. Shine was a bad boy, rude boy from the Flatbush area of Brooklyn. Okay? Did some time here. Alright? Did his bid. Then after his time was done, he was shipped back to his country, Belize. This is Shine. Alright? He's with the Bad Boy Puff Daddy. Alright? This is Shine. Now here's what. After being deported to Belize, Shine found himself knowing that he's an Israelite. He went to Israel and spent some time in Israel studying the law and tradition of the Israelite. If we could read it, this is an article. You could look, you could check it out. It says, taking a shine to Judaism. Shine 3 life stages. In a impoverished child in Belize with a Jewish heritage and a gift of hip-hop rapper who topped the chain in 2000 before going to jail, and now in Jerusalem strengthening his Jewish identity. This is Shine. Going from bad boy hardcore rap out of Brooklyn, did his bid, sent back home to Belize, went to Israel, and found out that he is of the stock of Israel. He's an Israelite. Now, Shine may not have the whole understanding like we do, okay, because of course he's getting the teaching from, from the other nations that's occupying the land right now. But it's still the Most High doing. Now you ask how? How? How's it the Most High doing? Now this is where Shine is right now. Check this out. Shine now is back in Belize, running to be prime minister of his island. This is Shine. Now let's see if we could read it. It says, the Honorable Moses Barrow, the former Bad Boy Records rapper known as Shine, has been immersed in politics in his home country of Belize. Having been elected to the House of Representatives, recently Barrows was named the leader of the powerful Brazilian political party as he continues his rise as an elected official. This is Shine. Shine, as we just read, was a one-time bad boy, rude boy. Right now, he's in his country of Belize as the elected official of his party, running to be prime minister. An Israelite from the tribe of Benjamin. With the understanding that Shine has, knowing that he's Israel, what do you think he could possibly do for the people out in Belize? Went from the dirt. Most High worked with this young man. Now he's golden in position of power. But here's something that's very interesting about Shine as you go further in research. And I read, this is the Right Honorable Dean Barrow. This is Shine's father. Right? Let's read. Dean Oliver Barrow, born 2nd of March 1951, as a Belizean politician who served as Prime Minister of Belize from 2008 until 2020. While his son was out in Israel, while his son just coming out from doing a bid, he was the prime minister of the island, well, mostly Benjamin, of the island of Belize. This is Shine's father. So now we know that Shine is coming from a family, a bloodline, a royal family in Belize. As we continue reading, Dean Oliver Barrows, politician who served as Prime Minister of Belize from 2008 until 2020. Also serving as a leader of the United Democratic Party, the IUDP, an attorney by profession. He served as Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Foreign Affairs from 1993 to 1998. And was the leader of the opposition from 1998 until the UDP, excuse me, I can't hardly see it, but won the February 2008 election. Barrows started his first term as Prime Minister after victory in 2008 election. He started his second term after the UDP again won an election on 7th March 2012. He started his third term when the IDP won again in 4 November 2015. This is Shine's father. Okay? Dean Barrows. Now his son Shine, who at the time, well, his father's a prime minister of an island. This brother Shine was out here in Brooklyn, Flatbush, doing his thing. But the Most High changed things around on Shine. The Most High took this Benjamin and raised him up. Have him understand who he was. Now he's back in his island. You know, Most High will, he does become prime minister, so he can do what? Make changes. If it be the Most High will right now. But that was Shine, and this is his father. Now, the reason I'm saying all of this, bringing this out, is because we here too are Israelite. Again, the Most High is raising us up. And all praises to all the leaders and the elders of the different camps and gatherings who contribute to raising us up and giving us awareness on who we are. Okay? And we should be very thankful and grateful for it. And we're growing and we're rising. But now, it's time for us to start moving in a direction as our forefathers did. It's time for us to start thinking. Okay? It's time for us to be watchmen within our captivity now. Because right now, we're in perilous times. We don't know what our rulers and our captors are planning next. Okay? But if we're going to be the watchmen, we have to look at what's going on with these rulers in high places. Okay? So we can start informing our people, Israelites, waking up, how to prepare themselves for the next thing to come. Now, I just want to go show something here, right? During the pandemic, right? And I remember this very well. During the pandemic, our governor at that time, Governor Cuomo, had shut down everything. Yeah. Had shut down the whole New York. Everything was shut down. Including all the gatherings and all the churches, synagogues, everything was shut down. Okay? And we could read it. It says, citing religious belief, lawsuit challenges an NYC vaccine mandate. Okay, this is, if you look into the news and you pull this information up, this is the New York Jewish Week, ITA. 5 Orthodox Jews in New York have joined a suit challenging the city vaccine requirements for indoor space. Okay, you could look at it. I just wanted to bring that up to show the reason that when Cuomo has shut down everything out here in New York, I don't know what's been going on with other states, but I know in New York everything was shut down, including synagogues, churches, gatherings. No one was able to gather. But what these Jewish out here did, they took the governor of New York State to court. They put a petition against him for what? Shutting down all their synagogues and their place of worship. Okay? They took him to court. But as time went by during early 2020, and at the end of 2020 in November, guess what? They won the lawsuit against the governor at that time. Yeah. They won against the governor, where the court had petitioned and made a rule that all the house of worship should be open. But the compromising thing was, it was only but so much people can gather. You can only have an occupation of between, I think, 25 to 50 people gathering. But the point I'm making is that they use their power, whatever power that they have, in order to take the governor to court and to overcome it. Okay? Now, I know Israelites are saying, well, That's them. That have nothing to do with us. But what do you think Daniel would say? What do you think Mordecai would say? What do you think Christ Yeshua Mashiach would say? Oh yeah, we gonna put we're working on something showing Yeshua Mashiach dealing with rulers in high places. Okay? So moving on forward, Israelites, we have to sort of be watchmen now. Okay? We have to find some way again to strengthen our, ourselves into unifying a little bit more. Okay? We're not saying here we're trying to unite all Israelites, no. But that's something for us to think about while we give thanks and praises for the Feast of Purim. Moving on forward. Okay? So I just wanted to bring this provoking thought, understanding, land backing on the Feast of Purim that we've been putting out. And we give thanks and prayers for that moment. Okay? Well, in the meantime, also, we like to give special thanks to our sponsors. There are those who's been supporting the work that we're doing, so we like to give them a shout out and special thanks. First and foremost, we like to give thanks to Heritage of Jacob's Church, to the elders and the teachers, the Levitical priesthood that's been teaching us the law class at Heritage of Jacob Church, located at 2801 Church Avenue, Brooklyn, New York, every Sabbath day from 3:30 to sundown. I'd like to give them all praises for their work and also the elders of the place and for their support of the work that we're doing. Also, we'd like to show support to one of our members of the church. Name is Dr. J. Pierre. He's an Israelite officer certified with the state of New York to provide both marital and premarital counseling. This brother's an Israelite. He's an excellent teacher. Okay? Have the whole understanding of courtship, Israelite marriage, weddings, down to its T. Okay? So he has a business where he's counseling those who's coming to this truth of understanding about maintaining their marriage in their homes and building familyhood. Again, this is brother Dr. J. Pierre. A marital and premarital counseling as well as officiating marriages ceremony. Okay, and this is a brother that's part of the Heritage of Jacob Church. And you can contact him, Family Renaissance Ministries Organization, and there go his phone number, his contact number at 347-528-7920. That's Dr. J. Pierre. Okay? And also, we like to give thanks to another brother who's part of Jacob Heritage, another Israelite, for his support. We want to support his business. This is brother ELIE Thomas. He's a real estate broker. He's out in the New Jersey area. So anybody who's seen this teaching that's out in Jersey or looking to buy a home or looking for a place to live and anything like that, you may contact ELIE Thomas, a real estate broker. He's an Israelite. Okay, he's one of the elders who is teaching us the laws at this at our Sabbath class, law class. And if you're in the New Jersey, South Jersey, Orange, New Jersey, you're looking for a home or place, contact this brother ELIE Thomas. Okay? And again, all praises for the Most High for this provoking thought. Okay, we will be, continuing to try to educate and give a higher understanding of, the word of the Most High, His Bible, and we're also asking everyone to, subscribe to our YouTube page. This is True Heritage Ministries. Subscribe, and as we continue and we start putting more understanding, more lessons, you press that bell, then you'll know when we load certain things up. We want to continue to, preaching out the understanding of the Most High, that power. Okay? Again, this is Provoking Thought. We'll be coming, Most High will, every week to try to give you more deeper understanding of the Word of God. Again, you can subscribe to our YouTube channel, True Heritage Ministries. And with that, I'd like to say all praises to the Most High. Have a blessed day. Shalom.